stewardship skills into science and engineering curricula. Christopher helps with University of Tennessee's researchers navigate federal requirements for data management, sharing, and educates researchers in the skills needed to manage data well. He holds a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Georgia Institute of Technology and a master's in information science from University of Tennessee, Knoxville. And Chris, I turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Amy. Let me get my screen shared here. Can you all see that now? I'm going to assume everything is
Yes,
good. Okay.
I can see it.
Well, thank you for, I was very pleased to see an invitation from Amy to talk to you guys today about the Open Research Toolkit. And so the Open Research Toolkit is a 14-module education and training program that I put together last semester, fall of 2021. And so it's all about the open research ecosystem. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the background of what led me to decide to build this toolkit, how I went about it, and then also show you the toolkit itself online, show you the different parts and resources that it includes. And then I want to talk to you some about some ideas that you might have after seeing it, some ways that you might think it could be improved, or some additional modules that we could add to it over time. And I'm always open for collaborations on that. So and Amy told me that this is an informal group, and so I'm going on that and just going to basically talk to you. I do have this PowerPoint prepared, but it's really just for me to kind of have some prompts to talk about. So the table of contents I've already mentioned. I'm going to talk about the background of why I decided to do this and how I put it together, talk about the actual toolkit itself, and then demo it online, show you the different parts that you can access online, and then talk about some of the future directions for the toolkit. So for the background, just going all the way back, I started this job here at University of Tennessee Libraries in 2013 as data curation librarian. I was the first one here at UT. As Amy mentioned, my former career was as a civil engineer, and I had almost 10 years in that career path before I completely switched to librarianship. I'm happy to tell you that story one day of how I switched careers, but this is a much better fit for me. So, over the last 9 years or so, I've been teaching a lot of data management best practices and talking a lot about data management plans, as you can imagine. And so, that has been kind of the bulk of my work. But over the years, I started to kind of branch out and to broaden into other areas within the open research umbrella. I started to teach some webinars on fair data principles and open data and reproducibility of research and things like that, that I felt were definitely relevant to the job that I was doing and important for researchers to know more about. But I also realized that this open research kind of ecosystem, and the reason I'm calling it an ecosystem is that I feel like it's a lot of different interrelated and interconnected parts that really support one another, and taken together really do form an ecosystem. So that's why I'm calling it the open research ecosystem. So I've started to realize there's a lot more to this than just data management and data sharing and fair data principles. So I really wanted to learn more about all the different areas in which open research can help and can have an effect on someone's activities. And I knew that, I was probably not the only one who was interested in learning more about all the different parts of open research. So I decided, why not make an OER and kind of practice what I preach and put it all out there for people to use on their own if they want to learn more about open research as well. So that's kind of what led me to decide to apply for faculty development leave here at the University of Tennessee. Some people call it research leave, some people call it sabbatical, but it would give me dedicated time to focus on doing one project or a very small focused thing that I would not normally have time to work on while also doing the rest of my job. So I did apply for that. That process started actually in summer of 2020. 2020. And so I had to actually submit this proposal for faculty development leave in the fall of 2021. I'm sorry, fall of 2020. I'm getting my dates mixed up because, pandemic time is everything just kind of runs together. So fall of 2020 is when I actually submitted that proposal, and it was approved. And so I began to kind of gather resources as I came across them over the course of my regular job. I would go looking for different things related to open data or open access of research articles, reproducibility of research and things, and everything that I would gather, I would put it into an EndNote database. And so I then began just kind of deciding which modules I would want to include within the toolkit. That process took several months of just kind of thinking about all the different aspects of open research, and so I began outlining all the different modules that I wanted, and ended up coming up with 14 in the end. As I mentioned earlier, I did put everything that I gathered into EndNote groups so that I could come back to it later. And then my leave actually began officially in July 1st of 2021. So now, the actual process of getting to July 1st and actually being able to say, okay, I'm officially on leave now, that was a lot of work in itself, of getting other people lined up and agreeing to take on my normal responsibilities in my job, and also training them to do the different things that I was doing also, so that when July 1st hit, I could actually say I'm on leave, and I trust that all the other things are being taken care of well and competently. And that was true. My colleagues really stepped up and took care of all the things that I normally do. So I really appreciate them for that. And so the leave was July 1st through December 31st of 2021. And during that time, I actually rented a small office from a friend of mine, and I worked out of that office, which was off campus. And I rarely came to campus during that time because I wanted to have that separate working space that was not work and was not home, which I had been working on for many months already during the pandemic. And so it was that separate space to focus on doing exactly what I needed to do. And I worked on that for like 40 hours a week full time for most of the fall. I think I finally got to the point where I could say this toolkit is finished and it's ready to go public like mid-November of 2021. So that was many months of working on building all the different parts of the toolkit, which I'll show you in a little bit. And then the toolkit actually went public on December 1st, 2021, where I sent out a bunch of emails to listservs and shared it with colleagues that I knew, and it all went public on the OSF. So talking a little bit about the toolkit itself. So all materials that I have collected and all the original materials that I have put together are open and shared on the Open Science Framework. at the link you see there. And I have assigned a Creative Commons 4.0 license to all of the original work that I have shared on there. There's, I had to, of course, share all the resources that I have reused as at whatever license they currently have, but most of them were already open, so I didn't have to do a whole lot there. But anything that I've shared on the OSF is CC BY. So and I've also put up all of the videos in which I've actually narrated each of the PowerPoint presentations up onto a YouTube channel, and that the YouTube channel itself has a DOI, as well as the OSF. The OSF also has a DOI, which I didn't put on here. And then on the YouTube videos, each of the videos are subtitled in both English and Spanish. The English subtitles are actually typed in. They're not the auto-generated kind. I typed them all in because I had to prepare a narration anyway. So I just input all of those into YouTube, and then the Spanish subtitles are auto-generated. And then, I think each of the modules within the toolkit can be used any number of ways. They really are independent of one another. They don't necessarily build on one another in such a way that you would need to go through them in order. So each one is independent. Each one does reference other modules within the toolkit that are related in some way. And then you could also use it as part of a full-length curriculum if someone chooses to do that. It would definitely need to be augmented with additional reading materials, additional assignments, and things like that, because it doesn't include any assignments. So you would need some assignments and those kinds of things. So each module contains PowerPoint and Google Slides presentations, and then a comprehensive script for each of those slide files in both Word doc and PDF. And then all of those have been narrated by yours truly and then those files are shared by MP4 also, and also on the YouTube channel, which I'll show you in a little bit. And then the entire resource list that I pulled together on EndNote is also exported out as I believe it's a Word doc, maybe a PDF as well. So all of those resources are included, so you can go read them all yourself. You can, so it's all there for you to use as you need it. And so I think at this point it would be good just to pop over and show you the Open Research Toolkit on OSF, and then talk about some of the future directions. So let me try to change my screen share here. Okay. So what you see here is the OSF site where all the materials are shared for the Open Research Toolkit. Just a little description of the toolkit itself on the wiki page. And I did kind of build this toolkit with librarians in mind. So just, keep that in mind as you go through it. Although it really, I think, could be useful for anyone that's interested in learning about open research. There's a citation given here for anyone using the toolkit in any way. And then down here on the where all the files are contained, you'll see the first grouping of files are the Google Slides version of the presentations. Each of those should link out to the Google form, to the Google Slides themselves. So this is the, for example, the very first module that kind of gives a background and overview of the open research ecosystem. So that's here, and then you also have PowerPoint files for each of those, which are down below here. And each of these are downloadable as well. And then we have the presentation notes, the narrations, in other words, of each of the PowerPoint files in Word document and in PDF. And then we have the recorded modules, MP4 files uploaded here as well. And then the last grouping here, or the last item is the resource file. It's all included in one big list of references. So just to briefly tell you about the topics that I've covered, I'll start out by just doing a broad overview of the open research ecosystem in module number 1. And then I talk about the many different principles and practices of open research. And module 3 is the philosophical underpinning of open research. In other words, it's what are the philosophical reasons why someone might want to embrace open research principles in their work. And there's, I think, four or five major philosophical groupings there. So that was a really interesting module to put together. And then I talk about open access to published research, and then research data as well, fair data principles, reproducibility of research, and then I have a module where I call it the 5 R's of open research, which talks about reproducibility, replicability, reuse, all the different R words that sometimes can get muddy. So I try to identify some nuanced differences between the different words that all begin with R. And then open peer review, open licensing, and open advocacy. This open advocacy gives a kind of a step-by-step process for developing an advocacy program on your campus if you're interested in promoting open research or really any issue whatsoever. And then we talk about citizen science and open research policies, and then open education. So that's where the OER gets talked about there. So each of these are also, as I mentioned, a recorded narrated video on the YouTube channel here, and each of these are narrated and also have English and Spanish subtitles. So then let's just pop up one of these, and let me see if I can share the video properly here. Sound, okay.
This module is part of a series of modules in the Open Research Toolkit created by Christopher Aker, Associate Professor and Data Curation Librarian at the University of Tennessee Knoxville Libraries. All materials in the Open Research Toolkit can be located at the Open Science Framework project link shown. All original work is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution 4.0. You can copy, modify, and distribute the materials even for commercial purposes with attribution to the author. The author has provided a suggested citation for you to use. All images used in the Open Research Toolkit are public domain unless otherwise noted. For comments, suggestions, or corrections to any material herein, please contact the author at openresearch@utk.edu. Now, on to the content.
So each of the videos has that initial introduction slide, and then it goes on to the content for that particular module. So I think that that is essentially the toolkit that shows you all the materials that you can access. And so I'm going to pop back over now to the PowerPoint and talk about future directions. Where is that? There it is. Okay, so just a minute, I'm trying to find the right screen for me. Okay, so The future directions, I have thought about taking it on the road in some form or fashion. Still don't know exactly what that might look like. But if it's something, if you have some ideas or you might want to collaborate on something like that, I would love to talk to you more about it. I think it could easily integrate into some iSchool curricula in some way. Some iSchools have courses on open research or data management in general. So perhaps using it as part of an iSchool curriculum could be useful. Could also expand upon each of the modules, adding all kinds of assessments and assignments and things that could be used as a 4-credit course. I've considered creating a MOOC online and just offering it for free online. In addition to, it would be like the 4-credit course, but just, online for anyone to join at any time. And then I do want to continue to expand it in different ways. And some of the future modules that I've already identified I want to add are open research ethics, some of the CARE data principles, and perhaps some discipline specific modules that might be useful in individual disciplines. And then I'm always open to your ideas as well. I feel like this is, as an OER, I want to bring in more people, bring in your ideas and especially your help if you're interested in helping to expand it beyond what it is now. So I think that pretty much wraps it up, and I would love to hear your ideas and your thoughts and any questions you may have.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. There actually are a few questions, and there's a suggestion for a conference series at the Practice and Experience in Advanced Research Computing, PERC, which I think is in July. Is that right? It's coming up pretty soon for this year, but maybe next year.
Yeah, I have not been involved in that, but that's a great idea.
And there are a couple of questions that have gone into the chat that you've kind of answered some of them, but maybe we'll just repeat them and see if you want to expand. So what considerations did you make for accessibility? You mentioned that you put in the subtitles manually in English and then you had auto-generated. I assume that's in YouTube for Spanish, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Are there other considerations?
That was all that I had time and ability to do right now, but I'm happy to expand it into other areas and to make it more accessible in the future.
And the question about the EndNote database, which you said yes is available as a Word doc as one of your sections in the OSFs. So you answered that question. And then there's a questions about, which you sort of have answered, about plans on collaborative contributions to this curriculum. I mean, you mentioned that you'd be willing to collaborate with people, but I wondered, maybe that's a question for the audience. Are there suggestions about how Chris might collaborate with members of our group or other groups?
Yeah, so I'm very interested in collaboration. So go ahead.
I was thinking in particular with regards to research reproducibility. Like, I don't think a lot of people make the connection between that and kind of what cybersecurity calls integrity. So I think a lot of researchers especially forget that cybersecurity isn't just about confidentiality, like having health data. It's also about making sure the data doesn't get modified maliciously or anything. And
yes, good point. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
I could definitely see a module about that. I had thought about how I would add modules that were related to any of the ones that I already have. I think that, like, for example, what you were talking about could be a, I don't remember which module reproducibility research is, but it could be like, like 4.1 or something, which would expand upon that topic and go into more detail on different areas.
Yep, and I think there's a group called Trusted CI that's kind of cybersecurity for research specifically, but they did a report on this already. I linked it in the
Okay.
chat. So
Good, thank you.
probably just take materials from there.
There's a question with a clarification that's come through about going back to accessibility. Did you put your slides and other materials through accessibility checks? So like for screen readers and things like that?
No, I didn't, but that's one thing I can do. I'm, you know, I would love to go back and do that, but I have not done it yet.
So I have a question. Before you started this project, did you feel like you were well versed in open research? And I guess what were maybe some of the major resources that you pulled from? I mean, we can go and look at the EndNote resources, but are there some that you'd like to highlight in this discussion?
I guess I had a cursory knowledge of a lot of it, but like some of the things that I didn't know much about was open peer review, citizen science, and I guess the policies. I wanted to learn more about all of those. So, no, beyond that, I think I had a cursory knowledge of you know, I had a knowledge of fair data principles, that I had done webinars on that before. And so this was, you know, primarily so that I could actually learn more about each of these different areas. And so that's why I created it. As far as resources go, you know, there are some really good open education resources already about open science, the open science in a kind of specific way. There's Peter Suber's book on open access. There's, you know, and then I just found lots of articles and book chapters about any of these specific details, like but like the 5 R's, where it's talking about reproducibility and replicability and those kinds of things. There's, you know, I pulled together at least 3 or 4 different articles that talked about each of those in different nuanced ways, and I kind of tried to integrate those and to kind of figure out, all right, based on what all these people are saying about these words, what do I think they really mean, and how can I identify them for this purpose? So so yeah, those are all in the resource list, and yep, that's basically it.
There is a suggestion from the chat for the MOOC. You could link up with the RDMLA initiative, and then there's a link to the GitHub instance in the chat. I'll put that in the document.
Very good.
And then there's a question about, do you mention specific platforms that do or do not comply with the various sets of data restrictions, such as HIPAA, the EU data principles, and things like that?
No, I don't recall mentioning that specifically, but could be a good addition. Thank you, Carl. Mara, do you have a plan for updating these materials over time as policies and technologies continue to evolve? Yeah, that's definitely a challenge that I've thought about, and sustainability is going to be the most challenging thing, I think, as you mentioned, things change over time. So what I'm planning to do at this point is go back and kind of review the material on probably every other year. I don't have time to do this every year, but I think every 2 or 3 possibly years, I review the materials, and I can recreate the YouTube narrations as needed, if necessary. It's not hard to just replace a few slides and then go in and replace sections of the video. So that's possible. And then I think that would be an excellent place for help from other people if they're interested in helping out in sustainability.
So I think you had mentioned, like different places. I mean, are you connected with the responsible, I'm gonna blank on the term, like responsible code of research at your institution?
Yeah.
Because it seems like this would,
responsible conduct of research.
yes, thank you. Conduct.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I've done some presentations for those groups. Our Office of Research usually has a seminar series, maybe once a year, where they talk about responsible conduct of research and different aspects of that. And they typically invite me to talk about data, fair data principles, or responsible usage of data within the context of like human subjects data and IRB and things like that. So yeah, I think that they would probably be interested in a module or two out of this toolkit as part of that series.
And there's a question about usage. Are more people consuming the content as slides or via videos?
Good question,
So
Wendy. I've been watching the analytics on OSF just to kind of see how many people are hitting the site. And then also YouTube provides me a view count of each video. For the most part, I think the videos have been getting it ranges from 5 views to almost 40. And I think the one talking about principles and practices is the one that has the most views on YouTube, which is interesting. So, and then OSF can also give me some download counts of the files, but they haven't been as popular downloading the actual the PowerPoint files. And I think possibly because maybe people are using the Google Slides version, which just opens up within OSF. Also, they just would rather watch a video. I don't know, but those are the kind of stats that I've been seeing.
would anyone like to unmute and ask their question? So Chris, do you have plans to present this at any conference coming up?
I am going to do a lightning talk on this topic at IDCC. And then I'm also, I proposed, I can't remember the name of it, it's the science data, science librarian conference that's coming up soon. I haven't heard if that's accepted yet. I
So
haven't
that
done it
would
at
be-
RDAP yet.
That would be like the Southeast Data Librarian Symposium or something like that?
That's not the one I'm talking about, but there's a science librarians conference coming up soon. It's virtual.
Okay.
That I proposed for a lightning talk. And then yeah, I see Amy's comment about RDAP. RDAP would be great. I haven't proposed for RDAP yet, but that's a possibility for next year. Science Librarian Bootcamp. I think that may be what it is. Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Amy's iPhone.
Yeah, but thinking about PERC, because it's like we're almost done for this year, but next year this would probably be a great workshop. Just
Okay.
like a train the trainer thing.
Uh-huh. Okay. Would love to talk to you more about that. Is this Deb talking?
Yeah, this is Deb.
Okay, great. Would you mind reaching out to me and we can talk more about it? Because I haven't been involved in PARC. So I would love to know more.
Sure
I'll go check out the website too that's linked above.
Yep. And just to clarify, we do talk a lot about data stuff too at PERC. And they just couldn't fit data in there.
All right, great.
So.
I did write a blog post about this for iAssist, the iAssist blog. Also, there's a group called Fort in Europe, which I wrote a blog post for them as well, and have been getting some good feedback. Just saying thank you for creating this resource. That it's good for their library to have this resource to learn more about open research. So feedback's been really good and positive, and I'm grateful for that.
I think along the same lines with Deb, you could also offer an RDOC workshop as well. So that would be really nice. Obviously, we have a year now to plan that one out because we've just gone through RDEP. So that would be good. Well, we look forward to hearing about the expansion modules that you might do, and if people are able to go to these various conferences, if you're able to do the workshops or offer the lightning talk on the resource, and to hear about how people, if they are able to integrate it into any work that happens. I will say that I taught a 4-credit semester class on what I call the open data movements. And this came out just as we got started. So I put it as an elective for the students, but the next time I offer the course, I will be integrating it more into the course. So.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you all for your feedback. This is all really valuable. And, as only one person, I can only think about so much. And I really appreciate all of your tips and thoughts on making it better. And, the accessibility is something I need to work more on. And so I appreciate your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, and maybe that's something that you could include as sharing, is how that process of making this more accessible. Because I think a lot of us are really thinking about how to do that better than what we do now.
Right. Yeah, I did include alt text on all the images. So that's one thing I did. I'm learning more about accessibility as well as I know many of you are. Many people know much more about it than I do. So so I did alt text on all the images. I did captions on the videos, but I think screen reader testing would be great. So thank you for that bit of advice.
Well, if we don't have any additional questions, let me just do one last quick check of the chat. Or if anybody does want to, like I said, go ahead and unmute and ask a question now, please feel free.
Yeah, Amy, Christopher, thank you. I did have one question because I was, as we start to think about training new incoming research associates and doctoral students for the upcoming academic year, I'm wondering, I may have missed part of this, but is there an opportunity to sort of pick and choose among these individual topics for some of the concepts that you're presenting here? Or are these really dependent upon one another? I think about some aspects of researchers, really sort of embrace many of the concepts, but have limitations on how they go about that. And so might there be an opportunity to be selective on what modules are used and sort of disseminated or applied?
Yes, Bob, thank you for asking that. They are, I think, independent and can be used individually. each module does reference at the end other modules that are related in some way to the topic, but they don't necessarily need to be done, viewed in a particular order. But I think, yeah, each one could be pulled out and used independent of the others.
Great, thank you.
Amy Nornberger is offering to share their internal guides on accessibility. And so, Amy, if you'd be happy to share that with Chris and I, and then I can disseminate it to anybody who might want it, could reach out to the track coordinators to get a copy of that. Would you be willing to do that?
I'm putting my email in the chat, the one that I would like to use for communication related to this toolkit. So if you don't mind, just email me there at openresearch@utk.edu.
I think Amy unmuted, right? Did you want to comment?
Our guidance is currently in a wiki, so I have to see about exporting that stuff for you. So, but yeah,
Okay.
I'll see what I can do.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, so Chris, we really appreciate the presentation and the sharing that you're doing of this information. And to everyone who attended today, thank you so much for the rich discussion. It was really nice to have such an interactive discussion today. And so this is being recorded. So if you joined a little bit later, you can check out the whole video on the YouTube channel. Linked through the link is in the call document, and also if you're on the CARC website, you can get to the YouTube channel from there. So otherwise, if there aren't any last questions, I don't see any. Really appreciate everybody coming today, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.